Good morning, everyone. My name is Brittany Zakszeski. I work at the University of Delaware in the School of Education, and specifically, I teach in the school psychology program. So I am a health service psychologist with a focus on school-based mental health, and I'm also a behavior analyst who focuses on implementation science applications in educational settings. Really, my work is centered around how can we adopt very efficient practical strategies in schools to be promoting well-being and positive mental health outcomes for children and adolescents, especially in high-need educational settings. So my interest in this area really started, well, really blossomed, I would say, during my applied psychology internship year. And this was in 2018 and 2019 when I was working primarily in high need schools in the school district of Philadelphia. One of my primary responsibilities was to be working and coaching different professionals in a K-8 school in adopting interventions that they could use to address students who were at risk for primarily anxiety and depression. And as we were doing this work in schools, we found that there were a ton of interventions designed for clinical applications that really were not accessible to many schools or were really not implementable to many schools given their staffing structures and resources available. And of those interventions that were available for supporting students in schools, many of them were addressed more on like conduct problems, externalizing concerns, and not things like risk for anxiety and depression. So with my team here at the William Dick School, we were looking for an intervention that was addressing this internalizing area of concern that could be implemented at a tier 2 level or for students who were at risk of adverse mental health outcomes, who are not actively experiencing significant concerns, but who are presenting at risk for concerns in the future. That could be implemented by staff without extensive mental health training, because we know that there's a significant mental health workforce shortage, especially in schools these days. And in this case, we were also looking at something that would be appropriate for use with early elementary students, because we saw that there were more and more students in the grades kindergarten through 2 range who were presenting with risk for anxiety, but who did not have interventions designed for them that we could readily implement in these schools. So what I did, this was several years ago, is I drew on 2 broad intervention models that have been consistently implemented in schools. One of those models is a model that combines cognitive behavioral instruction with a mentorship or coaching model, which in schools we call check-in, check-out. And some example programs here are the Courage and Confidence Mentor Program, the Resilience Education Program. These are programs that combine this like school-based model of CBT with this coaching and mentorship provided by school professionals. And another model that I drew from was behavioral skills training, where we are directly introducing, modeling, rehearsing, and then providing feedback on, in this case, youth's demonstration of a behavioral skill or strategy. And in this application, we were focused on behavioral coping and behavioral coping skills as a target that would be really helpful for our young early elementary students to learn. So we developed this program that in the school we called the COMCAT program, where we had a curriculum that used 5 brief behavioral skills training sessions, and that included some generalization sessions really focused on helping students apply those skills that they learned in our group to settings outside of our group, as well as some booster sessions. We developed these really straightforward materials with some example scripts worksheets, visuals, template letters, so that there would be minimal preparation and minimal like housekeeping work needed by our program implementers. We also developed this coaching protocol, or in schools, what's commonly called check-in, check-out, that in which we would have our school-based professionals providing increased prompting, practice, feedback, and emotional support to our students as they practice learning and using these behavioral coping skills outside of our curriculum group meetings. And so here you can see, again, this is for an early elementary population, K to 2. We had this coaching card with some visual supports on the back that is really designed to make the strategies that we're teaching in group really salient to our students, as well as salient to the classroom teachers or other support staff who are with the students throughout the day, throughout the week. And, in a very brief conversation like this, I don't have time to really walk through our mechanisms, hypothesized outcomes, et cetera. But just really quickly, what we were targeting was knowledge of emotion monitoring, knowledge and recognition of when to use a strategy, as well as fluency in actually using those strategies, with the idea that we would be helping students recognize their emotion, activate those relaxation behavioral coping strategies, which would then be leading to fewer unpleasant emotions, increased behavioral regulation, increased subjective well-being. So in the pilot, underpowered randomized controlled trial that we ran a few years after developing this program, and with support from the American Psychological Foundation for an early career psychologist grant, I was asking the question, to what extent does this program increase students' knowledge of relaxation strategies and decrease their own self-reported internalizing symptoms? To what extent do we see those any potential gains in knowledge and reductions in symptoms sustain over time? Do we see that type of maintenance? And then what is the usability of this program as reported by school-based personnel implementers, not members of the research team, and student participants? Because you'll remember I started out by saying I wanted a highly usable, practical, accessible program that could be implemented in schools with minimal resources and even in schools with significant staff shortages. So, we had a large call for applicants for schools who were interested in learning and piloting this program across 3 districts, 1 urban, 2 suburban. We identified 9 schools to participate. We allocated at the school level. So we randomized based on the school unit for a number of reasons in terms of clustering, professional learning, and as well as some potential spillover effect controls. We ended up having about 5 schools and 46 students in the treatment condition, 4 schools, 26 students in our delayed treatment condition. We identified the students who were eligible to participate using a common universal screener, a screener that's commonly used in schools. And we had the screening results reviewed by each school's multidisciplinary team that was tasked with supporting students at risk. And then, of course, we gained guardian consent and student assent for participation. In terms of measuring our program implementation, we look at both adherence to the session components, as well as dosage to the number of sessions, the duration of sessions attended, as well as the coaching check-ins or that COMCAT coaching process using permanent product, again, as an initial pilot study here. For our impact measures, we looked at students' demonstration of knowledge as to how to use the relaxation skills that were taught by the program. We also used the Scared C to evaluate these young students' self-report of anxiety symptoms. And we asked the guardians of these students to report on their perceptions of students internalizing symptoms as well. Although we had significant participation concerns with this, we had very low rates of participation at different occasions here. So I won't be really emphasizing the adult ratings in the results that come next. But of course, we also wanted to look at usability. So we used two different variations of the usage rating profile, one designed for intervention implementers, another designed for children's report, to assess these domains such as acceptability, understanding, feasibility, desirability, etc. As just a visual, so you can see what this looked like across the conditions and phases. We had that screening using the tool called the Sabers initially. Then at time one, we had participants in both conditions complete that knowledge assessment, the anxiety self-report assessment, and the BASC, which assessed the guardian perceptions of internalizing symptoms. At phase one, we had the program implemented in the treatment condition. We then had a second assessment with the same impact measures. In phase two, we had the program implemented with the delayed treatment condition, and then we had a final assessment of those impact measures. So, in terms of our findings, remember our first research question was around, do we see increases in knowledge and decreases in symptoms following participation? What we found comparing the first two time points for our treatment condition is that we had actually significantly greater performance gains on the knowledge assessment and decreases in students' self-report of anxiety symptoms for between time one and time two, again, for that treatment condition. If we look at the delayed treatment condition, just comparing times two and three, or the occasions right before and right after program implementation in this group, we also saw significant knowledge gains, but reductions in symptoms of anxiety were not significantly different between those groups. Looking then at any gain maintenance, and this is only for the treatment condition, we saw that there were not significant differences between time two and three for our treatment condition, meaning that we didn't see huge drop-offs in the gains that were made. But there were some small effect sizes that suggested that knowledge gains were slightly reduced, but that reductions in anxiety symptoms had somewhat continued following the implementation of the group. Then in terms of usability, here on a scale of 1 to 6, you'll see that most of these scores are really the desired direction, that our implementers were moderately agreeing to the most part that the program was acceptable to them, that they understood how to implement it, that the program was feasible, that their schools had a climate that supported implementation, and that homeschool collaboration was of a benefit to the program. That too, for system support, suggests that they pretty much somewhat disagreed that they needed more support from their schools in implementing the program, which is actually a desired finding for our study. Then in terms of student perceptions of usability using the children's usage rating profile, on a scale of 1 to 4, with 4 being strongly agreed, we had students somewhat agreeing that, or excuse me, moderately agreeing that the program, the COMCAT program, was personally desirable, was feasible for them to participate in, and was well understood by them, that the strategies were accessible to them, and were somewhat inferring here that that also suggests this was developmentally appropriate for them. So, our major takeaways are, again, this is a limited pilot underpowered RCT. We have some preliminary evidence of program efficacy, although we know that there was a limited sample, that I, as the program developer, was closely involved in training our implementers, evaluating the program, et cetera, that we had somewhat unbalanced treatment conditions as some artifacts of some uh, situations that arose following and during the randomization process, that we had really low participation in parent FASC responses at one of the time points, which really prevented us from evaluating the guardian's perceptions of changes in anxiety symptoms. There is also limited variability in the usability ratings, that generally our implementers and our students provided favorable impressions of the program, although some of our qualitative feedback from our implementers suggested a few areas for differentiating the program for different grades, which is an area that is currently underway in our program development process. All right. And then I'm happy to share any references that I cited in this presentation for you. But for now, I will stop sharing my screen and happily answer any questions you all have.